And with that, I'm excited to talk about the future of media and Joe Rogan. So let's bring on Chris Irons. Hello, how are you?
Hi, I'm great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so Joe Rogan's views on his podcast dwarf corporate news media ratings. And I think the media is still in denial about the fact that Joe Rogan and other content creators are flourishing like none other.
Sure.
And you've got some great insight in your latest blog post. So tell me about what you've been thinking.
Well, it's a common sense situation. It doesn't really matter whether or not the media wants to, pivot and change their business model in order to try to head down the path that Rogan is forging. And by that path, I mean just open dialogue, truthfulness, not being afraid of hearing out what people have to say, Socratic dialogue, and really just, discussion, honest discussion with good intentions, even if it sometimes is inaccurate and sometimes is accurate, to try to figure out what ultimately, the best practices are going to be for you, for your community, for the human race, for mankind as a whole. It doesn't really matter whether or not the media wants to get behind that. He's forging the path and he's the leader. And so they're going to have to fall in line behind him. It reminds me of, before UFC became super popular, Joe Rogan did this debate on ESPN with Lou DiBella, the boxing promoter, where they asked, Lou, are you afraid of UFC having an impact on boxing? And Lou DiBella said, "Oh, it's got nothing to do with boxing. It's like human cockfighting." Kept coming up with all these ideas as to why people should ignore the fact that UFC was exploding in popularity. And what Rogan said to him is, "Look, I love boxing, but you have to come to terms with the fact that your sport is being swallowed." And very similarly, right now, the mainstream media has to come to terms with the fact that their industry is being swallowed. And Rogan gets the views, he has the viewership, he has the support of Spotify, and there are several engines that continue to power him. One is, the capitalistic engine, right? He brings viewers wherever he goes, so he's going to be a tough guy to cancel. Somebody, I think it was the New York Times, wrote an article that said, okay, he's uncancelable, which is great. Common sense, which is something that the entire nation needs to revert to, no matter what side of the political aisle you're on. And the fact that, legacy media has really gone down a path with the COVID narrative, with the narrative over the last, 5-6 years, the political narrative that is, with one story after the next, making them look foolish and making them, what little credibility they have left just kind of fall off. And, look, I don't think that if you asked Joe Rogan 5 years ago, like, do you want to be Mr. like mainstream media? Do you want to be the guy that has to go out and ask these questions? Like, do you want to be the next Larry King? You'd probably just be like, no, I just want to shoot the shit here in a studio with my friends. But it just so happens that because he comes by it honestly, because he inquires to the truth, and he does it with good intentions. He's not serving anybody. He's out there legitimately trying to find answers to fringe questions. That those are the grounds that, for either because they don't have the courage to do it, or because it doesn't serve their sponsors or their bosses, something that the mainstream media doesn't do. So the point of the blog post is that the mainstream media is already losing the fight of its life. And the big prediction that I make is that in the coming year, they're going to have to make some enormous marked pivots to the way that they report, and really change what's considered to be news reporting, or else, capitalism is going to have their way with them. The consumer is going to, listen to people like Joe. They're going to tune into your show. They're going to tune in elsewhere, because no matter what side of the aisle you're on, you can't be bamboozled over and over and over again and keep coming back. At some point, And I write in my article, the tie that binds 7 billion people on Earth right now is COVID. And no matter who you support politically, we all want the same things. We want to be informed about COVID. We want to do what's best for our family, for our friends. We want to do what's going to bring us the best quality of life. We want to help our loved ones, and we want to help our communities. We generally have common goals here that span across political aisles. The media got away with it for 5 years because half the country hated Donald Trump, so it was okay. At least that half of their viewership kind of hung on. But now COVID has become the vein that has opened up, the vessel for people that are seeking honest answers through open dialogue, for them to get in. And that's what I think is happening here. And that is what I think is going to help catalyze this big change in the coming year.
Yeah, so there's your Twitter on the screen there with your blog post we're referring to. I tweeted the link to this article you wrote, and I got like 4,000 retweets, which I normally don't get that many retweets, but I think this resonates. This article resonates with so many people who are, there's so many people who've really just been forced to open their eyes about the fact that maybe we need to take the mainstream media corporate news with a grain of salt, because some of their spin has been more obvious than ever before in this past year. And I'm not going to show your whole article because it has all the trigger words that YouTube deletes videos for. I'm trying to maintain my YouTube myself, but the I word, and talk of the drug, the I word.
Yeah.
What that's Joe Rogan really investigated that topic when the media was just so blatantly propagandist about it, and that's one thing that you hit on. But
I wrote another article too. I don't know if I'm allowed to say it or not, but I wrote another article talking about the mainstream media's coverage of that story. And look, that was before Rogan had Sanjay Gupta on his podcast, and he kind of handled it there and got his mea culpa. But the point of the article that I wrote after that happened was to point out the fact that the coverage is so blatantly untruthful, and it leaves you to this place where you have to wonder, like, is this just nefarious, or is this ignorance at a level that that we've never seen before? Because look, obviously I'm not the smartest person in the world, but I've done enough reading and enough critical thinking on my own to come to what I believe are conclusions far closer to objective truths than the mainstream media has been able to arrive at. Something that Rogan does on his podcast through encouraging this open dialogue that he's had.